Yay.
Dog, it's time to rock. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first Sunday show of the year, the first British Electric Blues show of the year on the 5150 channel, Brad. My gosh, that's a mouthful, bro.
You got it all out somehow. So well. And we're on time. So.
Beautifully done. What a pro you are.
Well, everybody knows who we are. That's the most important thing. We know who we are, and it's always a pleasure to be here with officially the first, the flagship show of the channel, to be here, ladies and gentlemen, with the Rock Professor down there, and also hot from his sojourn from Brisbane, Brad Cook.
Gold Coast, actually.
Gold Coast. Oh, there is a difference.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Like $20,000.
Look at that. 2 minutes in, first faux pas of the year.
Can't get through a show without him, Simon. That's good.
Yeah, well, true. Yes.
Great to see you guys. Great to see you, gentlemen. And happy New Year. I know it's a little while after New Year's Eve, but happy New Year to you both and to everyone in the chat and everyone that's watching. It's good to be back. As much as holidays are welcomed, it's good to be back.
Got people coming in. Cool.
And it's good to see the Rock Professor too. I kind of feel like the Rock Professor and I have already done a show, albeit he's just given like a 30-second video, and we put up a 30-second video on the channel. But seriously though, folks, that was good. We got together and we decided that we needed to do something at least on the channel. A lot of you will agree that Jeff Beck and his passing has been a big thing for a lot of people, certainly for our channel. And before I say any more on that, I think it's only right that we pass on now to Brad, for Brad to say a few words.
Could I say, Andrew, because I say Happy New Year first for everyone in the chat, and I'll get to you in a minute. And I like the fact that you and I were having a messenger conversation. And in the middle, I just put, scrub that. We're doing Jeff Beck because he's just died. You're like, what?
Oh yeah,
amazing, wasn't it? It was amazing. That was kind of like literally breaking news in the midst of us having a chat.
Yeah,
changing our plans as we go.
Yeah. And we can talk about that a little bit later, ladies and gentlemen. But I'd like, before we get into a conversation with Jeff Beck, it's really important, I think, that we hear from Brad, because I've spoken to Brad a couple of times over the last couple of days, and I know how Brad's feeling. So for us to move ahead, I'd like Brad to, if you could share with us, bro, your thoughts on Jeff Beck, please.
Yes, Andrew and Simon. I think I speak for all of us when we say Jeff Beck was an amazing musician, guitar player, and a massive influence to everyone. Jeff was truly one with the guitar. His approach to the instrument was somewhat unorthodox, but that's exactly what made him so incredible as a player and unique. He had complete control of his instrument. He never became conventional. He always reached for like new dimensions while he was playing. It was wizardry. He was casting spells and weaving magic on the Stratocaster like no one else. He could play tenderly, light as a feather, and evoke emotion. He was constantly evolving and pushing the limits. Jeff was not satisfied to remain the same, so he challenged himself continuously. He was like an explorer or a journeyman. He never really took the same path twice. He kept pushing and striving forward. He could play aggressively with a heaviness that was ungodly, leaving us all spellbound. He told stories with his phrasing, being extremely lyrical with his technique, somewhat poetic, one would say, about his lyrical playing. Jimi Hendrix paid tribute to Jeff Beck at the end of In From the Storm because he obviously even inspired the great Jimi Hendrix. Apparently, his amp and pedal setup was quite simple throughout the years, which proved that all the sounds he was pulling was more of a combination of his hands, his soul, and the noise inside of his head being teleported and transported through his guitar. He was a pioneer from the early days of the Yardbirds to the Jeff Beck group, to the collaborations he's done, to being a solo instrumentalist. Jeff incorporated rock, jazz, fusion, blues, electronica, and contemporary music, and then fused it together with his own swagger. His playing has inspired just about every guitar player on the planet, including myself, Simon and Andrew included. He was one of a kind, untouched, unmatched, unparalleled. There'll never be another one like him. He was more than a musician. Yes, I believe so. He was a messenger that was sent here, like all other guitar heroes that have passed, to spread light, love, joy, sheer happiness through music and his guitar playing ability, and definitely to inspire us all. We may have lost Jeff Beck, one of the great guitar players. His music lives on forever. God bless Jeff Beck. Do yourself a favor, go listen to some Jeff Beck tonight.
Yeah.
I knew you would do something wonderful. I knew you would. I knew you would. And I needed to hear that. Thank you. I know that we've got 20-odd people watching, and we're sharing some deep thoughts here, ladies and gentlemen, with you guys all. And, you know, I don't want to sound elitist when I say this. I don't want to sound like we're putting other people down when I say this, but there are true fans. There are real fans, Simon, and I think our channel has proved it over the years that we've put Jeff Beck in its rightful place. We've done some great shows on Jeff Beck. We've spoken about him many times on this channel, Simon and Brad. You know, we didn't cash in. We're here as fans. We're here as real fans to share and do a tribute. And Brad, your tribute is remarkable, and I'll cut and edit that out as a separate video, brother. Thank you.
Short. Yeah. Yes.
Simon.
Well said indeed. Beautifully said. Yeah, really beautifully said, Brad. I think it's you know, I think you know that Jeff Beck is one of the columns that holds up our show, doesn't it? Really, you know, him, Peter Green, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton. You know, these are the pillars which the British Electric Blues Show is based upon, and I think it's really important that we mark his passing and talk about him a bit, because we probably don't talk about him enough.
No, we don't. And
as a guitarist,
and I'm glad you mentioned that. And I suppose this might be a good opportunity now, Rock Professor, for you. You know, after we've got Brad to do that fantastic eulogy. To say hi to everybody in the chat before people decide to go and make cups of teas, and you know, because the best part of the show's over.
Yeah, we can all go home, yes. After that, I will indeed. So, yeah, if we could say good morning to Digital Guitars UK. Morning, Brad Cook. Good morning, Brad. Got Ellen. Good morning, Ellen. Arvin, Holly Lewis. Morning, Holly. Fantastic. Christopher Live Summer. Morning, Chris. We've got scrolling down, Guitar Man 45. We've got good morning, guitar. Hugh Caldwell. Morning, Hugh. From sunny Scotland. Janice Lala. Morning, Janice. And lots of people saying hi again, and they'd watched the show earlier, Andrew. Show with Jim and John and Simon. That was great. Jonas Halberg. Morning, Jonas. Scrolling down, and Arvin as well, of course, the mighty Arvin. Morning, Arvin. I think that's every Wednesday store. Morning, Dave. That's Dave, isn't it? Yeah.
Hi,
Good
Dave.
morning. yeah, hope we're all good. Happy New Year to you all, and thanks for joining, welcoming us back. It's very nice to be here. Very nice to be here, and very nice that you're all here too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
cool. I kind of, again, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't put much preparation into this show other than get some photos for us to talk about, and at some stage, hopefully, Brad and I and the Rock Professor are going to talk about 3 specific things that we like about Jeff's career, and we're going to share those with you. And if you want to be part of that process, you're more than welcome. But as the Rock Professor said before Brad did his eulogy, I was talking to the Rock Professor. We were planning Savoy Brown, how we were going to do that, et cetera, and then Simon sent me a message in the same conversation saying, "Oh shit, Jeff Beck's passed away." Yeah.
I did, yes. Yes. Oh, could I say good morning to Derek Clapton as well? I missed him, but I'm getting him now. Good morning, Derek.
And Jay. Hey, Jay. We've got Jay here as
Jay.
well.
Oh, 708. Morning, Jay. I was watching a bit of your show earlier.
So for me, it was a shock. It was a shock. It was when you consider Brad, yes, he was 78, but you look at some of the videos, he's playing up there with Johnny Depp only a couple of months ago. He's touring, and 78's not that old, when you think about it. These guys are supermen still. You look at Keith Richards and and Mick Jagger and Eric Clapton. You think and then all of a sudden, Simon, you get I couldn't. I couldn't have jumped on and done a show and cashed in on Jeff Beck passing. I had to go and mourn, and I don't mind sharing that with you guys, and ask the Rock Professor to do something for us. And thank you, Simon, for doing that.
That's all right. You can't imagine the stick I got for it in my house from my teenage daughters. Look what popped up of my stuff. They're like kids giving you a hard time for anything. But no, I was, it was worth doing, and I think it's worth marketing. And I think that just having that little bit of space as well, isn't there, before you actually think about his influence, what he did, and the way that he did it as well. And I think that's as important as anything else about Jeff Beck, isn't it? It's always the way that he did it and his own unique style.
Well, do you remember, guys? We were talking about this not long after his documentary came out. I don't know whether it was after his documentary, but we were doing a show, guys, and we were talking about it. And one of the things that struck me, and we had a bit of a conversation about it, was, Jeff Beck, he'd go somewhere, Brad, and if he didn't like it, he didn't give a shit. He just picked up his guitar, went home, and plonked himself on his mum's couch, Simon. How many times did he do that?
That's quite a few, isn't there? Yeah, mid-tour and stuff, yeah. Went home, got his spanners out and built another hot rod. I'd be like, you do have to, I do absolutely admire that kind of single-mindedness and that complete adherence to the vision that he had and the sound in his head. And I think, that without any compromise at any point, wasn't it? It was always, what I'm doing comes first, and the way that I want to do it comes first. And if it doesn't fit, or I'm not comfortable with it, I'm just not doing it. And whatever, it's a bit like, not joining the Rolling Stones, isn't it? He pushes it out under Mick's door, like, nah, forget it. It's that. It's just, how many guitarists would have the courage to just shove a note under Mick Jagger's door, going, nah, I'm not. No, it's like thinking of the, all of that, I think he's completely right not to join the Rolling Stones, but to have, that's Jeff in a sentence, really, isn't it? That attitude to it. It doesn't matter who's asking. Doesn't matter, when he played on Mick's solo records and stuff. So they very clearly remain friends, and Mick would get him in to do stuff. But yeah, having kind of the courage not to join the Rolling Stones because that's not who you are. I'm not sure I would have had the same courage, I'm sure.
I'm glad you mentioned Mick Jagger, because we've got some pics, ladies and gentlemen, that we'll show. And in the context of doing research for pics for the show, Brad, Rolling Stones, Jeff Beck, 99 pics come up with Jeff Beck and Mick Jagger. There's very, very few pics of Keith and Jeff Beck together, but there's a ton of and I suppose that goes back to what the Rock Professor said. If you guys didn't know that, he was the guitar player on his solo album, the one that came out in the 80s. She's the Boss. And that's why that's a bloody great album. And we're going to rank that album one day.
Yeah, we should, 100%.
It's funny, 100%. Isn't it? It's funny that you mentioned that thing. You think about, and I mentioned it in a few of my posts, that you go, when you think about Jeff Beck, I think about Beck, Page, Clapton. Like there's three pillars of, and all born within 15 miles of each other. There's those three, and they're kind of in a, I don't know why, and there's no reason for it. And somebody on my post pointed out, but that somehow they are in a group by themselves. And Keith Richards is not quite in that group, is he? You don't mention him in the same way as you mentioned those three. In the same way, and one of the other columns of our show is Peter Green, and I don't mention him in the same way as I think of Clapton as that triumvirate. And I'm not quite sure why, but they seem to be kind of fit together. Not they're the only ones by a country mile, and not that as three great British blues guitarists. But I don't put Keith in that same sentence. I don't know if you guys do, but I don't at all, ever. No.
No, and I think that comes down to the fact of I think there's a lot, and look, we're digging deep here, ladies and gentlemen. I think it comes down to the personalities as well, not necessarily and solely, Brad, the musical abilities or where they came from musically, because they all came from a blues background. Yeah. Didn't they? In fact, you could argue that Keith Richards probably came from a more pure blues background. Jimmy Page came from a skiffle background.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeff Beck, we have almost, I think, of Jeff Beck as being more of a kind of, of his great hero is Galloping Cliff Gallup.
Yeah.
From and that you think to yourself, well, that's more of a kind of rock and roll thing almost than a purist blues thing. I'm sure he had all those blues things in his background as well, because they all did, but they all filtered it slightly differently, didn't they? Slightly different filter. I didn't way comes out in a slightly different way. And as Hugh Caldwell says, all completely different in style as well.
Oh yeah.
There's no mistaking Clapton for Beck or Page, or the other way around as well. That's a good point.
And sorry, Brad.
Oh, it was interesting to watch the amount of love and care that everyone was posting on socials that were part of his career. Everyone from Robert Plant to obviously Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and everyone that he was associated with. You're reading a lot of the people that were friends with him, that had worked with him, toured with him. There was just so many wonderful posts and people sharing love and care and affection towards his musicianship, his ability, but also him as a person. So that was wonderful to see. It was my Instagram feed was full of everything to do with Jeff for 2 or 3 days, and it took me probably 2 days to process all this, to actually get my head around this. To be honest with you, but there was some moving words there from like I said, the Robert Plant one was something that I thought, for a man of few words when it comes to social media and things like that, he posted something really wonderful about Jeff Beck. Jimmy Page and him were obviously very close. So Jimmy Page posted something wonderful. Eric Clapton did. few words, but obviously there's a lot of love there for Jeff Beck, and that's wonderful to see in his career. He's touched so many people and done so many amazing things in his career.
So I've got a question then I need to ask you guys in the context of what you've just said there, Brad. I'll ask the Rock Professor to answer this, and then I'd love to hear your answer. So where do you think Jeff Beck will be in the next 5-10 years, Simon, as far as the legacy of Jeff Beck with his passing? Is he going to be is he going to be in the top 3, the top 5? Are people going to be talking about him as an innovator? You got any theories or any thoughts on that you want to share with us before Brad gives us his views?
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because he has an interesting position in. I mean, I've seen him described not by me, but as kind of the guitarist's guitarist. So in a sense, that influence is a kind of contained within the guitar, in that guitar world. I think that maybe he's not quite given the due, and the influence spreading out into that wider thing. It's not quite like, say, Jimi Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen things. It's not quite that influence there. And I think you have to go and dig for it a little bit. People, if you see other guitarists talking about a guy called Jeff Beck, you have to go away and dig for it, don't you? A little bit. It's a bit like hidden treasure. And I think that in terms of that's where he's going to be. He's going to be one of those people that maybe doesn't quite have that kind of universal appeal and universal not influence, but universal kind of people know him all over in quite the same way. But I think that what he did as a guitar player and what he did as is clearly something that guitarists, as you get into guitar, if you're young, well done, and you're getting into it, that you go and that he will be somebody that will appear not maybe in the first tranche of people, but in the second of people like, you should go and listen. It's one of those things. The old classic record, you should go and listen to him, because he's amazing and he has a unique voice and did some extraordinary things on a guitar. And, and then you go away and you think, wow, listen to that, and I think that's he has a kind of that position, I think, in the, in the rock firmament of not quite being that kind of universal figure that that everybody in the world is going to recognize, but within you have to be inside it. Go on.
I've got no. I'll tell you my theory after Brad gives. After Brad tells us what he thinks.
Brad, what do you think?
Can I just do a couple of quick shout outs? We've got Fruitcake Tony in here as well.
Morning,
I saw
Fruitcake. Happy New Year.
Tim Thomas was in here. Johnny Bean's in here. And Janice Lala. And Gretch Zeppler. Thank you guys. And Crappy
Luxury. Morning, Crappy.
Crappy. We haven't forgotten you when we do Shrine, and that's coming up. Fleetwood Mac Shrine, you're coming on with us. I haven't forgotten.
Excellent.
Brad, have you got some theories on where Jeff Beck might be or could be or should be in 5-10 years?
Well, obviously, he's been always there in most guitar players' vocabulary. Let's be honest, he's always been there. And now with his passing, I think he'll get legendary status. I mean, he's got how many Grammy Awards did he win? 8 or something Grammy Awards, inducted into the Hall of Fame. He was the second guitarist of the Yardbirds. He was, his career path has been extraordinary, and he kept evolving and kept trying to change. And I think even like the footage I've seen of him playing in 2022, he's playing on top of his game. He never really slackened off and became a less of a player with age. It's like he just kept improving with fine wine, like a fine wine. But in 5-10 years' time, I do see him, a lot more people that, obviously acknowledge Jeff Beck as being a big influence over their playing. But now that he's passed, I think it will be more in the forefront of how important Jeff Beck was as a guitar player, as a musician, as an innovator. And look, let's be honest, no one's ever really touched what Jeff Beck can do on a guitar. Let's be honest. He was the most unique player. I mean, you talk about a lot of guitar heroes that are past, and there are similarities between a lot of players. But Jeff Beck was very unique, in my opinion. Obviously, right out there, like a left or right wing, like off in their own little world, and you've only just got to look at some of the greats would always talk about Jeff Beck as being an influence. So let's say in 10 years' time, I think Jeff Beck will still be relevant, if not way more relevant than he is before his passing. That's just my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think his relevancy is not in doubt. I think just...
Andrew.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think what's going to happen, and I think this is what's really interesting about the music that we love, guys. We get good journalists coming along. You know, there's been some great biographies already put out there on Jeff Beck, and I think as more and more attuned journalists become aware of it and do some and start doing some research, Simon, and I think that's where he's going to be discussed. For example, Commotion Emotion, the album that came out in 2010. Now this is no disrespect to that album, you know, because we've ranked Beck Ola, and we've ranked the first album, Truth, and we've ranked the Guitar Shop, and you know, and also the other great album when he's standing playing a Les Paul. These are great albums, but Brad, if you go and listen to Commotion and Emotion, and I don't think anybody has given that the research, you know, that album, Simon, deserves, and it will certainly get that. And, you know, this year we'll kick it off by ranking that track. That the albums on that track, we'll kick it off, won't we?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that, in a sense, that I'm picking on what you just said, Andrew, and thinking about that, because he kept moving all the time, you know. So he did, you know, Truth, and then he kind of just left that, didn't he? And then Led Zeppelin, you know, Jimmy Page took that template and kind of made it into Led Zeppelin and did his own thing, and you know, and made a huge success and a huge, you know, influence out of that one thing. Whereas Jeff had already moved on to something else. You know, he's in the Vanguard of that fusion thing in the 70s. Yeah, he did, you know, that kind of keeping moving forward, means you don't quite stick in one style for long enough and to make it, you know, more than an embryonic thing, and then you're on to the next thing, and then you're on to the next thing, and you know, that's completely in keeping with his kind of restless spirit that he had, I think. But leaving others to sort of capitalize on them in a way that, you know, the things that he left behind. Here, boys, do this.
I agree, and I think that's going to come out a little bit more. You know, we love celebrating good authors and good books on this channel, don't we, Brad? And we've got a record of doing that, and we're going to do that more and more. And there's some good authors out there that are going to take that challenge and do that deep diving that we want on what Jeff Beck has done. And I think that in turn is going to bring him, you know, that recognition. It's going to open up a new audience for his music and for what he's done. So the sky's the limit, Brad and Simon. What do you guys in the chat think? Are we off the mark here, or are we on the mark? I think the sky's the limit, and it's up to the fans and other journalists where they take his legacy.
I think you're right. There'll be a lot more books and authors that are relevant, especially ones that have interviewed him, ones that have come close to him and been part of his life. We'll definitely put some material out that'll shed a lot more light on Jeff Beck and obviously push him. But let's be honest, I don't think Jeff Beck ever wanted to be mainstream or in the forefront either. So his place is where he wanted it to be. He's actually, as a guitar hero, he wanted to evolve as a guitarist. Like I said at the start of this, he was like poetic with his playing. He's lyrically playing over the top of things. And if you watch him closely with his Stratocaster and the trem bar, the way he sits there and he plays with his volume, the trem bar, the tone control, at the same time as trying to play melodies and incorporating the whammy bar, like almost to give like a vocal effect, you know, to dip, to vocalize things instead of like finding the notes on the fretboard. He's finding them with the trem bar. He was obviously he played different guitars. He played Les Pauls, Telecasters, Strats. But I think what I'm getting at is he sits right where he wants to, where he wanted to be as a musician, and that's an innovator, not so much at the forefront like a commercial type guitar player, which I won't mention names. But yeah, I think he was happy with what he was doing, and he had a cult-like following. And you know, everyone that loved Jeff Beck, you know, during his career, are now coming out as, you know, passionately saying they're big Jeff Beck fans. So in 10 years' time, to answer your question before, Andrew, yeah, I think he'll be just as relevant, if not more.
Okay. Before we get on to our top 3 things about Beck, I just want to say this to you guys here live, Simon and Brad, and we were lucky enough to have Jim on one show that we ranked. I'm glad that our channel has done our little bit together as a collective, as a group of mates getting together and share and rank some great albums that Jeff Beck has been a part of. I went back and watched a couple of those shows over the last couple of days, and you know, we did pretty well. We did pretty well as a collective there, guys. And you know, I'm personally humbled to be part of the fact that you guys wanted to share and took that seriously, and you know, we've just contributed our little piece, our little bit to the puzzle of this great music. Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, yeah, I agree. And you know, we like to honor all of our heroes here, and so Jeff Beck is one of the heroes we've been, you know, fortunate enough to done some work with, but on his ranking of the albums and things like that. But we definitely will be doing moving forward. Definitely way
and
more.
Thank you for sending me the message too to fix up the banner too, bro. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Yeah, that was nice of you. Look. I think the thing is for me with Beck, and this will be my first point about Jeff Beck, and then I'll get you, Brad, to give your first point, and then you, Simon. I think the thing for me with Jeff Beck is that he was always there when I was a young guy, Simon. You know, when I was getting into the music, and the books and some of the magazines were always, you know, talking about Jeff Beck. But I wasn't listening to him as much as I was listening to, for example, you know, Eric Clapton and Keith Richards. It wasn't until I was in my late teens where I started listening to Truth and Beck O'La and going, oh wow, you know, and then sort of appreciating it for what it was, because, you know, it wasn't that classic rock and roll package, you know, for example, that Keith Richards was doing in the Stones. It was, you know, as Simon said and Brad mentioned in his intro, there's this eclectic feel to what he was doing, even back then. But what really got me focused and into Jeff Beck, and we're going to talk about this next week, ladies and gentlemen, when we do the first part of Guns N' Roses. When Guns N' Roses dropped their album Appetite for Destruction, and they were interviewing in guitar magazine Slash, and this is way back in the late 1980s, and he was talking about his guitar heroes back then, and Brad will tell you this, he was mentioning back then Jeff Beck. And so when the hottest guitar player, one of the hottest guitar players on the planet, Jeff, is talking about Jeff Beck, what do you do, Simon?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you do?
You go and bloody listen to him. You go and listen to.
I felt like Chaz Hodges then being played Yellow Submarine by Paul McCartney, and I don't know what to think. It's Paul McCartney. What are you supposed to think about Yellow Submarine? I felt like that then.
So I'm going to put that down as my important point, because I suppose you need to find the trajectory of or the jump off point where you really took an artist seriously. And I thought about it for a couple of days, Brad and Simon, and I think it was when Slash was talking about him, and I was listening to Guns N' Roses, and that's when I seriously went and got Beck's CDs and sat and tried to work this guy out. And yeah. So that's my first point. Brad.
Wow, that's a good one. I like it.
Thank you.
Look, obviously I'm the same, Andrew. Like I would, especially, I know exactly that Guitar World magazine interview with Slash, actually, where he's talking about his guitar heroes and he mentions Jeff Beck. And I remember that time, obviously, I was listening to Jeff Beck at that time anyway. I was listening to Jeff Beck. I was listening to Jeff Beck because of the tie-in with Led Zeppelin. So for me, Jeff Beck, when I listened to Jeff Beck, I was listening to Jeff Beck Group and whatnot. But my first CD I went and bought of Jeff Beck was Blow by Blow.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
I put that on, and obviously there's a lot going on in that record. There's a lot, and you need to sit there and take it in on a few listens. You can't just put it on like a nice, commercially viable record. and there's a lot going on, and it took me a long time to actually absorb what was going on musically. But once I did, it took my musicality to another level, because I was listening to a lot of straight rock and a lot of straight stuff, and then hearing Jeff Beck was that Blow by Blow record was something that knocked my socks off. After listening to it about 3 or 4 times, I start to understand it. And I think, I don't know if anyone's like that, but when there's a lot of busy music going on, for me it takes a lot for me to sit and absorb it all. I have to listen to it a few times. And I could tell how brilliant Jeff Beck was from that point. And obviously the Yardbirds thing with Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin, and then there was the Jeff Beck group. And I was very interested in Jeff Beck because of that. And that's what got me into Jeff Beck, if that makes sense. But I would always go and reinvestigate and listen to Jeff Beck whenever I was inspired by hearing people like Slash mention Jeff Beck again. There was a footage of Jeff Beck jamming with Guns N' Roses. I think it was in Paris on Locomotive, and he blew out the gig, probably because he didn't want to be there or something. Who knows? We don't remember. Tinnitus flared up and he couldn't do the gig. But the footage of that just inspired me to go listen to Jeff Beck again, and I went and I did that. So yeah, that to me, Blow by Blow was something that I'd listened to Jeff Beck a lot, but my first album I went and bought was Blow by Blow. So that's my first one, Andrew.
Awesome. Simon, what's your first event or thing?
I think my first recollection of Jeff Beck is really is Hi Ho Silver Lining. Let's face facts, kids. I mean, I think that when I started going to, I'm sure I've said this before on here, when I was about 15, we used to go to this club in Bristol called Tiffany's, and on Wednesday night you had a rock night done by a local DJ called Andy Fox, and so it's where you picked up on lots of these things. He played the classic rock tracks of the day, and Hi Ho Silver Lining was one of the things that he played at that in that club. So that my introduction to Jeff Beck is via, sorry Jeff, Hi Ho Silver Lining. He viewed it as a millstone around his neck, but that was my introduction to him. And then, like you, Brad, Blow by Blow and Wired, those two albums, those jazz rock albums, those were the first albums that I bought, because they were new. And I agree that, not easy albums, you had to spend some time, getting into them and understanding what he was doing, and that kind of restless innovation thing that, is clearly going on. But they're fantastic records, those Blow by Blow and Wired, to me, fantastic. And in the vanguard of that jazz rock, that jazz rock movement, with John McLaughlin and other people, but Billy Cobham and Spectrum and all those things. But and Miles Davis, but definitely in the vanguard of that, doing that stuff, and taking rock into more jazzy areas and things, and using his unique kind of instrumental style to things. So, and then clearly went back, to Truth and Beck and things, and sort of followed him going forward. But that's where I came in, and that sadly is Hi-Ho Silver Lining that pulled me in. But that's a good thing. Something, you got a piece of commercial stuff that pulls you in, and you investigate other stuff, then it's done its job, hasn't it, in a proper way.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Wonderful points. I do have some photos, ladies and gentlemen, to flick through with. So what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll do our second round, and then we'll go through some picks, and then we'll do our final round. Simon and Brad, the second event or thing that I want to talk about in regards to Jeff Beck's career is the Crossroads Guitar Festival that Clapton did. The 2007 one was the first one that Jeff Beck did. And if you guys haven't seen the Crossroads Guitar Festivals, they're available online. You can go and watch them. They're fantastic. The last one, though, that they did isn't that good, in my opinion, and we can talk about that another show, why I don't think it's any good as the previous ones. But the 2007 one, especially Brad and Simon and everybody in the chat, was really important because Clapton wanted him, got him on, and opened up. And those gigs that opened up, Brad, opened Jeff Beck up to a whole new audience, because you go and watch those concerts. This guy's wearing silver armbands. He's wearing a silver suit. He's wearing silver boots, and he's not playing blues, Brad.
No.
This guy's not playing, and he's doing stuff with and it's like, what's going on here? You know how the rock professor loves contrasts? Well, that's a bloody good one.
Bloody contrast. Well, isn't that Jeff Beck in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to a blues festival. I ain't going to play blues. I'm not going to dress like a blues person. I'm going to wear this weird kind of space age stuff. Yes, absolutely. Yes. I think that's Jeff in a sentence, isn't it? That's what. Singular vision. Well done.
Yeah. I have to agree.
Lovely.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was a wonderful performance, and I've read online some of the guitar players that were at the Crossroads Festival have come out and done some talking about Jeff Beck at those festivals now, and they've said that I think it was John Mayer's guitar player. Forgive me, I can't think of his name at the moment, but I'll come to me in a minute. But he mentioned something about. Sorry,
Walter Trout.
No. John Mayer. He's
John Mayer.
John Mayer.
John Mayer.
No, he's leading guitar player at the time. It'll come to me in a sec. But he mentioned something about how they were sitting backstage after they watched Jeff Beck play, and no one could really talk because they were so bewildered and shocked at how good Jeff Beck was. So.
Go and check out his version of Hammerhead. I think it's the 2010 one. Guitar, Brad, and he's got the wah, and he's and it's like I cried a couple of days ago when I watched it because this guy is just you're right, Simon. He's just singular. doesn't give a shit about anybody. He's just.
Well, you know, and that's a true artist, isn't it? That is a true artist. Somebody who doesn't care about the audience, who doesn't care about, you know, what he's doing. You know, there's no trying to fit in. It's like, this is what I do, bang, and this is where I am right now, and you either take it or you leave it. And I think that it's you know, that's
yeah,
that's a really important part of him.
David Ryan Harris. If you go
that's
and read
right.
if you go read his I've just looked it up, guys, and I apologize for not getting that. If you go to Instagram, read that's very interesting a little read. So after the show, go and read that.
But you're right, Brad. You're right, Brad. You know, a lot of those guitar players and those artists were speechless. You know, they were going because they were freaking out like we were freaking out at home. It was like, wow, yeah. You know, so yeah. That's my second point. Thank you for allowing me to talk about that and allowing us to have a bit of a chuckle about it. Thank you, Brad. What's your second point, brother?
Okay, well, mine's the Rough and Ready album. I know someone mentioned it here. I've forgotten. Forgive me for not remembering who it was, but a long time ago, I had guitar lessons with Dave Leslie from Baby Animals, and we were, you know, talking about Jeff Beck quite a bit, and Jeff Beck's one of Dave's heroes as well, and so he prepared a lesson to go through a song off Rough and Ready called New Ways Train. And so the rhythm parts, we were concentrating a lot on that and some of the guitar licks in that song. And, you know, breaking down what he does chordal-wise and the way he was playing on that record in particular, very difficult to emulate live. I know Dave Leslie does he's probably playing it right now with Simon Hosford on the Guitar Wars.
Yes.
Train. He does an amazing version of it. So if you want to see someone get anywhere near close to what it should sound like, probably Dave Leslie's the one to go and see. But what I'm getting at, that was my second thing with Jeff Beck. It was sitting there, breaking that down, having someone who'd studied Jeff Beck like Dave Leslie has break it down and the intricacies, the little things that Jeff would do, the voicings, you know, it's easy to learn a bunch of notes and play them together, but to play it in a way that is performed by someone like Jeff Beck is almost impossible. And I say that with, you know, the most utmost respect there. It's almost impossible to play Jeff Beck. But to see someone who can possibly do it close like Dave Leslie, you know, it was good to break it down. And one of those things that I'll never forget, there's little parts of that, there's little licks there that Dave and I would listen to over and over and over and over and over and over, and we still couldn't quite get exact what Jeff was doing. So we had to just make it our own, you know what I mean? And that was something that, but to have that song broken down in piece for piece like Dave did for me, just gave me a completely new respect for what Jeff Beck was doing on guitar. So that's my second thing, Andrew and Simon.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. Rock Professor.
It is in that thing. I always, when I think of Jeff, I think that kind of chromatic scale things that he does, those little three note chromatic scale, particularly Jeff Beck. I don't know why, but I always feel that when you hear those that sort of three semitones together kind of thing, that's a very Jeff Beck thing to me. You know, it does it so beautifully. So, well, the second thing I'd mention is that the mentoring of younger musicians like Tal Wilkenfeld and Joss Stone, and you know there are others as well. And I think that's, you know, that he was always, was it Tal Wilkenfeld was like 17 when he started playing with him.
Johnny Depp.
And it's Johnny. Well, yes, yeah. Okay,
you got to include him too. Come on,
got to include him too. Yes. Well, that's just part of his maverick thing, isn't it? You know, never mind what is going on in Johnny Depp's life. Never mind anything else. You know, he gets him out and he comes out with an acoustic guitar or whatever, and you know, and they play together, and it's like, I don't think anybody else would be doing that, would they? That's a uniquely Jeff thing.
Not when you consider he was being counselled at the, you know, we spoke a little bit about that on the 5150 show today. You know, Johnny was counselled. He was scrubbed, you know, because of what happened. And we don't want to turn this into a political thing. But as far as social media was concerned, Brand, he was out, you know, and Jeff Beck says, come with me, boy.
Yeah. come on tour with me. Whatever. I was just, you know, that's Jeff all over, isn't it? You know, it's kind of like, you know, a kind of loyalty as well, sticking by the people that you know and things. And I think that, but as I say, is
that a working class English thing? Loyalty? Is that?
Well, I don't think it's particularly an English working class thing. I think that it's just a thing. You either have it or you don't. You know, you either stick by the people, or you don't stick by the people. I don't think you can apply it particularly to English. I think everyone, you know, I think it's almost an individual thing. You've either got that, you either stick by your friends, whatever, thick and thin, or, you know, you're a fair weather friend and disappear when the trouble starts, you know.
Hey, Mark, long time no see.
Hey, Mark Dillon, good morning. So I think that, you know, but as I say, that kind of mentoring of younger musicians and, you know, and kind of, you know, I saw Tal Wilkerfeld say, I think I thought of him as my dad, you know, he's like, I'm like his daughter and stuff. And I think he thought the same thing as well. And I think that kind of being completely unafraid of a 17-year-old bass player, girl bass player, you know, I can't see many musicians going, yes, that's fine, you know, but, you know, he's like, yeah, you know, you start and play and you go, oh, she can do it, fine, you know, so she's in the band. You know, and I think that's, again, part of mark of his kind of maverick spirit, and but that kind of, you know, being completely unafraid of new musicians, new things, and, you know, there's no style that's outside of you know, of what I might want to do, what he might want to do as a player. I think that's, you know, for me, one of the things that struck me as well was, you know, the number of younger players and, you know, who kind of commented on it as well. So that's my second point. Mentoring the young.
I'm going to throw up some picks, and I'm just going to offer a couple of comments on a few before I get everyone else involved in the chat. But very good Facebook friend of mine
Morning,
today
Jim.
did a post earlier today, and there he is there if you want to go and check him out, Eddie Diaz. He's a Facebook friend of mine. Hell of a nice guy. He loves this music that we talk about. These are some pics of a post that he put on his Facebook page. So here you go, Brad. Look at that. So, you know, there's some magazines that he's collected over the years.
Wow.
And then those are the guitar magazines that he's that he's collected over the years.
That's brilliant.
There's his books. And a couple of other fanzine magazines, Simon, that you would have been familiar with back in the olden days in the 1970s.
Listen to him. The olden days. You mean when pre the car and we had horse and carriage? Yes. I had to sell my handsome cab because.
And those are some albums, obviously, that he's got there. Here's a couple of interesting picks. I hadn't seen these before, but this is Clapton playing with the Yardbirds after he left the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck.
Yeah. Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Cool. It is.
God, imagine those two in the Yardbirds. Blimey.
Just imagine what that gig. Look, I can't. Oh, Brad, what?
I'm only
Spit
just
it out, man.
What those balls sound like together.
Okay. There's Jennifer Batten. She posted some pics on her Instagram, so I threw that in there for you guys. His mate Mick. There's Sting and Eric. Another classic modern pic from Beck. That's his wife. And here's a still from him playing with the Stones. And he's tearing it up. Give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. I'll put this in there. Does that come up okay? Can you guys see that?
Yes. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, so give me a second, bro. Give me a second, Simon. Simon, give me a second. What can I do here? How can I do this? How can I fix this? Give me a second. I might have to... Give me a second. I'm going to reduce that and go. Can you guys still see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a second. I haven't done this for a while. Give me a break, guys. Come on. I gotta navigate. Hold on. Reduce the screen. Okay, now. Okay, and here we go. So, I didn't do these in chronological order, but we can talk about this a little bit later. But one of the great things, and we mentioned this a couple of other times when we've spoken about Jeff Beck. You know, Jeff Beck, one of the reasons why we love him is he played a Tele, he played a Stratocaster, he played a Les Paul, and he played Gretsch's and Gibson hollow bodies. He's played all the guitars.
Oxblood Les Paul was something I always loved.
Yeah.
Just the way he played it, the tones to get great sound.
Yeah. I always,
always looks super cool. Always looks super cool.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, isn't it? You don't, you think about later Jeff Beck and you think about the White Strat, you think about earlier and you think about him with the Les Paul and stuff. Don't you? It was completely synonymous with different parts of his career as different guitars.
I think about Jeff Beck. When I think of a Strat, I think of the Surf Green Strat he used to play all the time.
Ah. Yes, I always think of the white one with the small whammy bar as well. That he holds very delicately and moves it beautiful.
Another important event in Jeff Beck's career too, 84, the collaboration he did with Rod Stewart, and again that was a point in my life, guys, where I was going, oh, okay, so I remember hearing and listening to snips of this guy Jeff Beck. So actually, this guy Jeff Beck's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, always cool, always very cool.
Great solo on that album, isn't it? Great solo on that song.
Yeah. Morning Drops, Family Garden. You're not impressed by Jeff's haircut.
I love this one in particular because he's playing a Jaguar. So that wouldn't have been a cheap guitar, Brad and Simon, back in the day. A Jaguar was more expensive than a Stratocaster.
Yeah, they were like top of the range, weren't they? Jaguars.
Yes.
Bought them out as a sort of top of the range thing. Yeah, and more switches, Andrew. And we all know that more switches is better.
More money. Okay,
more switches is better.
I had to include
tone switches.
I had to include this album cover. I just think it's remarkable. It's a remarkable album, and I got it wrong. I said commotion and emotion before. It's emotion and commotion. So if you guys haven't checked this album out, amongst everything else, it's certainly worth a listen. This is the one that he's got Joss Stone singing on, Simon, as well. Yep. Gosh, he does a good version of I forget the song. It'll come to me. This is my third point that I'm going to talk about, if that's okay. But this is Imelda May and his wife Sandra there at the Les Paul gig, and we'll talk about that after we go through the picks.
Jaunty Beret.
And there he is there. Look at him. Look at the guy there.
Look at that. Look at those silver armbands. Come on.
And the way he just touches that trem bar.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I guess, Brad, you can tell me this, that if you're going to play like Jeff, you're going to start off pretty loud, yeah? So you can have the control over getting sustain without actually hammering the guitar wildly.
I'm assuming he played very loud. Yes.
Yeah.
The control. He used the volume on his guitar all the time.
Yeah, on it all the time, and that kind of that delicate use of the arm. You've got to be playing. Did you see that? I love that when Jimmy Page inducted him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they play together, and they just go into the Celebration Day or the Immigrant Song, don't they? In the middle, and and Jeff and Jimmy rocking out in really good. That's great fun.
Here's another good still from
Eric's going, what the heck is he doing?
Yeah. Sorry.
Can you do me a favor? Just go back to the last picture for a second, if that's okay. I want to just talk about these two had like such an amazing friendship. I've never seen a picture of these two without them smiling or laughing. Have you noticed that?
Point. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So these guys obviously were very close. Yeah. Right up until the end, unfortunately. But I'm assuming they had a close relationship throughout, all of Jeff Beck's career, pretty much, because Jimmy Page was the one who was asked to join the Yardbirds, and he recommended Jeff Beck. So, and then obviously Jimmy ended up joining. So, anyway, I wanted to discuss that before we move forward with that picture.
So I picked this one on purpose for a couple of reasons. As the Rock Professor rightly said, what the hell's this guy doing? From this guy here.
Eric contemplating for what's going on.
But look at the way he. Oh, come on, Andrew. Look at the way he is holding that trem, the short trem there. Look at it, just remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
It is, isn't it? That delicacy of touch, and see how short it is as well. Just that delicacy of touch to kind of, amazing.
So there's another Yardbird shot there, and I especially got this one here. Oh gosh, sack this guy. Look at that.
Yes. Not playing the Yardbirds telly.
No.
That's pretty early to have a Les Paul, isn't it? That's pretty early. 65, whatever. Yeah.
Underrated frontman, isn't he? This guy.
Keith Ralph.
Underrated. 66, Simon. That was
66,
taken.
Yeah, 66. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? It didn't really do much after that, did he, Keith Ralph? He had Renaissance for a bit, but
Twins?
Yeah. Yes, I know. Yes. So lovely is that, isn't it? Yeah. Jeff and Ron.
Another big smile, as Brad pointed out.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned Stevie Ray Vaughan in the chat. I think it was Hugh earlier. And again, right. Had to get this. Look at that.
And just one thing that I didn't mention that I should have mentioned was when you were asking about where he'll be in 5 or 10 years' time from now, Andrew, people will look upon Jeff Beck like people look upon Stevie Ray Vaughan, in my opinion, not in the same category, but they'll look at him as being a massive, important, like integral part of music and guitar playing.
I agree. I agree because again, it's going to be albums like this here, like Truth, that we've discussed and we've ranked on this show. people are going to go back and they're going to renegotiate these albums, Simon. It always happens when a great artist, a great musician passes away. People become aware of this back catalogue. So, you know, people are going to go back and check this album out. And this album here that we've spent time with, the three of us, with Jim, and passionately embraced here on this channel for the love of the music, for the love of the artist, for the love of the man, for the love of the music, mate. We're not here to cash in.
No, it's we should say. Holly Lewis says, Holly, Keith Ralph was the lead singer of the Yardbirds, principally,
yes.
Throughout their career. He did form, but he died in 1976, so aged only 33. So he didn't do much after the Yardbirds, but he is the lead singer and a harmonica player with the Yardbirds.
Yeah, a lot of people will go back and tell you that he is influential, like Jeff Beck was influential to a lot of guitar players. A lot of lead vocalists will always go back and point to Ralph as a trendsetter. You know, for a long time, well, for a short time, for a couple of years, Simon and Brad, it was the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds were neck and neck, weren't they, to be the premier British blues band. You know, some people would actually say it was the Yardbirds by a nose. So,
yeah. Well, they were certainly really big in the mid '60s, weren't they? The Yardbirds, was clearly. I just going back, Andrew, it struck me that the Truth album is,
yes,
a bit like the Beano album is a kind of blueprint for so much of the late '60s, early '70s rock going into that. Clearly Led Zeppelin took it on, but I think other bands took on that. What Jeff did on that album as well, into different directions. So I think it's a seminal record, and the things what he did on that is really interesting and innovative, and laying down a blueprint for what a lot of other bands did later on.
And thank you for picking that album for us to rank. Thank you.
Well, I think it's an important record. I think that.
And we'll speak. There they are. There's the Jeff Beck group there. Look at those skinny Englishmen. Look at that. Look at that skinny Scotsman for a starter.
Get your shirts on. Christ.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at the drummer. Oh my gosh.
Skinny, geeky, yes, with glasses. Yes. It's one of those. Do you think it's one of those? Cut the drummer out.
But you go and listen to that album, as the Rock Professor said, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't checked it out, or watched our video, I'll attach those videos to the stream if you want to go and check out our rankings. But the Rock Professor is right, and Brad and I relished talking about these albums because we understood, a year ago, 2 years ago, just how important Jeff Beck was to us individually as men, as guitar players, but also to what we want to achieve here on this channel. Talk about the greats.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, talk about and the influential as well.
And we will be doing some more Jeff Beck records moving forward, 100%.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for allowing me to flick through some pics there. We always love the pics. We always
cool
love.
pics.
We always love the pics.
There's some great footage of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jeff Beck on YouTube. I think there's a great version of them going down. You should check that out, guys. Stevie's singing it, and they're going head to head on guitar. It's fantastic.
Yes, I'm very you're right, and that's one of that's Freddie King's song. Go and check it out. Yes.
Check it out. Freddie King.
Brad knows.
Yes.
My third point, gentlemen, that I want to share with you, just to move the show on a bit, and I mentioned it before. It was the tribute show. I was going to pick Ronnie Scott's.
Yeah.
But I'm picking the tribute show that he organised in 2010 for Les Paul. If you guys haven't seen it, so the Rock Professor and I and Brad have just been talking to you about the same time, how Jeff Beck's running around looking like a spaceman, wearing these Aztec silver things and all that, and silver boots. So the same year, Simon, he's putting on plaid pants, a rock and roll shirt. He's pulling out a Gibson Birdland or a Gretsch, and he's playing rockabilly for one of the greatest guitarists ever in the world, Les Paul. And again, I've got the rock professor screaming in my ear saying, "Andrew, I want contrast." And boy, you got another example of contrast there, rock professor. A rockabilly Jeff
Beck. Indeed, yeah, with Imelda May and Daryl Hyam and lots of like Brian Setzer and stuff.
So we all love rockabilly here. We all love rockabilly, So Daryl Hyam is just a killer guitar player. And of course, Setzer's got his own class, Brad Wall of it, and then you get Jeff Beck in it, and then you get these hot. If you guys haven't checked it out, you got to go and check out that DVD. It's just, it's well worth the time. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, 100%. That's your third one.
That's my third one, brother.
Well, I was fortunate enough to see Jeff Beck live twice. I've seen Jeff Beck. I looked up the dates. I had to look them up again because it's been such a while. January the 27th, 2009, and that was with the live.
See ya. Bye. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear this.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. That was with
you're not sorry, not sorry. Yes.
That was with the live at Ronnie Scott's lineup, which was Tal Wickenfield on bass, Vinny, what's his Colota?
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know the keyboard player's name, Jason Rebello or something like that. That was with that lineup. And that was incredible. And obviously, I'd watched the live at Ronnie Scott's thing from back in 2007 or 8 or whatever it was. And honestly, when they broke into, big block and things like that, I was just like, God, I was so revved up at the gig. It was amazing. But then I saw Jeff Beck in 2010 and March the 26th at the Palais Theatre in Melbourne, and he came out frequently on these blues festivals like Bombay Blues Festival and West Coast Blues and Roots Festival. He used to come out as part of that.
Okay.
And he did some side shows, and the side shows are incredible. But this time I saw him. He had Prince's old. I'm trying to remember who it was now. Prince's bassist Rhonda Smith, and I've forgotten. It was a different lineup, a different drummer, different bassist. But yeah, it was a phenomenal performance and different energy on that night to the lineup with Ronnie Scott's, the live at Ronnie Scott's lineup. But Jeff Beck was on point, and that's something that I walked away from that 2010 gig just going, I give up trying to play like Jeff Beck. There's no point. But I need to,
interesting.
I need to keep diving deep into this guy's back catalogue and keep absorbing that musicality that he had. And I encourage everyone to go and watch as much live footage of Jeff Beck as you can, because you seeing him do the bar work on the Stratocaster, you're seeing the way he frets the notes and the what he's doing, the trills, the this or that, the way he plays with. He dropped the guitar pick after a certain point in time and just started playing with his fingers.
Wow.
And got more dynamic. Yeah. So when you watch him perform, if anyone here has never watched Jeff Beck play, go and watch live at Ronnie Scott's, that gig in 2007 where Jimmy Page is in the crowd. I think Brian May's in the crowd. You know, they were guys that just looked up to him as, you know, inspiration. And when you watch the footage of Jeff Beck playing, it becomes obvious that he was one with the guitar, he was one with the music, he was one with everything he did. And let's just put it very bluntly, he was one of a kind. So no one will ever be as good as Jeff Beck in my eyes. But yeah,
Thank you,
that's
brother.
my third one, Andrew.
I envy you.
Yeah.
I envy you, and I'm glad you picked this because I know that you mentioned this a couple of times when we've ranked. You like reminding us that you've seen him, and so you should. But no. Seriously, bro. Come on. No, it's important that you need to share these real experiences, not these bullshit experiences that I'm just talking about.
No. There's no bullshit here. That's the wonderful thing about. Hey, Andrew, that's the wonderful thing about what we do here. No, it's none of it's bullshit. It's what's coming from us, and we've got a pure heart for this music. That's why. So
yeah. Exactly. I'm here. Rock Professor.
Well, you know, on January the 24th, 1974, at the Colston Hall in Bristol, Beck, Bogart, and Appice.
I know. I was waiting for that one.
So anyway, on the game of Jeff Beck top trumps, I win.
I was waiting for that. If you've been around the Rock Professor a few times, you know the bands, the big bands that he's seen.
Boring. Well, it's not that. It's just, I've said this before on this, that you know, in the UK in the early 70s, there was this kind of, every city had a municipal hall, and the bands went round all these municipal halls. They're owned by the local councils, you know, so like the Town Hall in Birmingham, and we had the Empire in Liverpool, City Hall, Sheffield, Civic Hall in Wolverhampton, the De Montfort Hall in Leicester. And so, and gigs cost 75p. You know, so you go and see people like on a weekly basis, pretty much. You go down the Colston, you could buy a ticket on the door, you know, in those days. So you just go and see people. So in a sense, it wasn't, you know, it's not anything like what it is now. It's completely different. Clearly, it's a completely different age and a completely different way of doing things. But, you know, so you just went down. So I have to say, I have no memory of it, particularly as a gig, you know, but it was just one of those gigs that we went to. Because you thought, oh, who's on this week? Oh, Jeff Beck. Let's go and see Jeff Beck. You know, Beck, Bogart, and Appice. That'll be good. So we went and see him. You know, but as I say, I don't particularly have any memories of it as a thing. But yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'll stop misbehaving on the Well, but anyway, back in the Stone Age, yes, when I was there, right, I took my hansom cab down to the Colston Hall. You'd be pleased to know, Andrew, and parked outside. But I think my third thing is really the obvious stuff, really, which is about the styles and the experimentation and the innovation. You know, the constant moving of of him as an artist, just keeping it, you know, never staying in one place too long. You know, always moving on to the next thing that interests him, changing his playing, developing. You know, playing with all sorts of different artists all over the place, you know, doing all sorts of different styles. Andrew, as you've said, you know, that sort of rockabilly thing to that very melodic, you know, playing Over the Rainbow, and all those things that make him a unique artist, you know, and definitely I think the word artist applies here. You know, a man with a unique vision and a unique, you know, sense of his own playing and his own position as an artist, and wanting to pursue that at the expense of, you know, the commercial side in some sense. I think he did all right, Jeff. I think he was, you know, he had enough to have a nice house and build a few hot rods and travel first class. But you know, and I think that's really important. I think it's really important that thing about being an artist and having a singular vision, and regardless of, you know, the success or whatever, you know, it's not about that. It is about the next artistic statement I'm going to make, whether it's a record or playing live or whatever. So I think, you know, that for me is the the third thing. Is that
Thank you.
That innovation.
And I'm glad that you mentioned Over the Rainbow, because that was going to be part of my conclusion. I'm going to mention it now. So on Emotion and Commotion, he does a wonderful version of that song, and it's wonderful. It's just remarkable. Go and check it out. And it's always eternally optimistic. There's something about these English guys in particular with this song, because Clapton through the 70s has played that song live a couple of times during his No Snow, No Show tour. Brad, you know, he would open his 74, 75 tours with that song. So there's always that optimistic aspect, I think, of songs that I like about these guys and these bands and this time, that they weren't afraid to include in their set, to include in their music, because it could be conceived of being quite corny, the song Over the Rainbow. You know, it could, but when you see why they include it and what they do to these songs, and actually what the song's about, you know, it's about being positive, and it's about being fantastic. And, you know, that's what I love about it, Simon and Brad. And, you know, this guy, Jeff Beck, was part of that, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I listened to that version of that the other day, Andrew, so that was wonderful.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So my, I was just, when I was looking through all the stuff about, one of my favourite stories, when he recorded Blow by Blow with George Martin. He phoned him up a few months later and said, "Oh, I'd like to re-record some of the solos." Jeff Martin said, "Oh, the record's in the shops, Jeff." Too late.
Things move a bit quicker now, Jeff.
He had a nasty habit of wanting to re-record things all the time. It's perfection. So
it's lovely, that, isn't it? It's a proper. I think can I go and re-record? No, you can't, Jeff. It's out. It's in the shops. Loony.
You know, this has been a wonderful experience, Brad and Simon. I was looking forward to this over the last couple of days. I don't want to bore you guys. You know, I've had some personal issues, you know, that I've had to deal with, but also, you know, working my head around one of the greatest guitar players ever, and trying to negotiate that, and knowing that I was going to come on here and hang out with you three gentlemen and everybody else, our family, our friends in the chat, has just been wonderful. And again, you know, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, Brad, and we've said it ourselves on this channel before. You know, Jimmy mentioned it, you know, and he said he'd meet people and he'd talk to them and he'd say, "Hey, do you guys like music?" And they'd say, "Nah, don't like music." And so and we were talking about, like, okay, you can't quite trust anybody who tells you that they don't listen to music, Brad. You know what I mean? Doesn't have to necessarily be your music. It could be opera. It could be, you know, it could be reggae or something. You know, it could be rockabilly. But when they tell you, when they tell you, and they start going blah 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 about what they like, you go, "Yeah, I dig it. I dig it because I'm digging it too with my music." But when someone says, "Nah, don't listen to music," it's like, okay, move on. You're not my friend. Bye bye. See you. And I suppose the point that I'm making is that jumping on here, hanging out with my dear friends, talking about music, one of the greatest things for the soul, and with everyone else here in the chat. I don't want to sound metaphysical or anything like that, but it's a reality. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's been wonderful.
It's one of the joys, isn't it? A little oasis of pleasure and fun that we have here. Really good.
It's been I hope we've inspired some people to go listen to some Jeff Beck later on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I'll be taking him off my listening for a long time, bro.
Yeah, 100%. Very
absolutely
sad loss, but like I said at the start, we have his music forever. So, you know, do yourself a favor and go and listen to some Jeff Beck later on tonight.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna wind up because Brad's had a busy day. Brad's got work. I've got a couple of things I'm going to do. Would love to hang out and spend some more time with you. The Rock Professor's got to get breakfast. So we want to remind you that we're going to be back here next week. We can't wait for this. It's going to be an event of the season. We've been talking about this for years. We're going to be doing part 1, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. We're going to give you some background. We're going to give you some gear shots. Brad's going to talk about what he loves about the album. We're going to do an intro from there. The Rock Professor, he even lined up and bought the album when it came back. You know, so you know, yeah. The Rock Professor was in line.
Out all night.
Yeah. I know. You know, so, and we'll have a special guest on here that you guys will all know. We won't tell you who it is, and we're going to talk all things Guns N' Roses. Can't wait for that one. Rock Professor, I'm going to ask you to do the final goodbye. If you want to go through and say goodbye to everyone, good luck to that, because we've had 30 people and the chat was hot.
Fantastic.
But before that, Brad, do you want to say anything?
Oh, look, it's you know, like I said at the start of the show, just, you know, God bless Jeff Beck, and thanks to everyone who's joined us today and shared this. It's you know, it took a few days for me to process the whole thing. You know, I was away on a holiday trying to enjoy myself and trying to not think about the fact that Jeff Beck, one of my heroes, had passed away. So yeah, do yourself a favor, go listen to some Jeff Beck. Thank you for joining us and sharing this. This has been a wonderful experience to talk about one of our heroes. So thank you. Simon.
Yes, indeed. I'll run back up the top and see if hopefully I can get everybody in the.
Thank you, Rivka. That's a new person in the chat.
Yeah, Keith Campbell. Keith, thanks for joining, mate. Thanks for staying up. G. Bushnoff, of course. Janice Lala, Derek Glaxon. I'm getting you this time, Derek. Not forgetting you. Apologies for that earlier. Ellen Toll as well. Thanks, Ellen. Christopher Lysower, Tim Thomas, Hugh Caldwell, Keith running. Hugh Holly. Good night, Holly. Thank you very much for staying up and sticking with us. Which is John ZD351. Thanks, John. Arvin as well. Arvin was around earlier. So that's thank you guys. Ed, Fruitcake Tony, Johnny Bean, Mark Dillon. Who else we had? Just trying to get everybody. I hope I probably missed one or two, so apologies. Well, Drops Family Garden. Chris, we got him. So yeah, Janice Lala as well. Thanks, Janice, for dropping by. Very good. Yeah. So hope you all have a good week, and we will see. And Jonas Halberg as well. Thank you, Jonas, for dropping by again. Have a great week, everyone. Listen to some Jeff Beck, and we'll see you next week for Appetite for Destruction. Take care. That's the one.
Keep your hand up.
Yes, sir. Keep your hand up.
Bye-bye.